hello again. Uncle Russ Gibb jumping up and down on Group W cable here. At random, we call it, for want of a better name. Well, how you been? You survived another day. And you're still working. Well, that's good. Reading the local newspapers, you would think that everyone is unemployed. Yet the majority of our citizens are employed. So think a little bit about that. And we're not taking that lightly in the fact that there are people that are unemployed. And of course we're concerned about it. But I sometimes think that we get so carried away with some of our problems that we forget to count our blessings. Well, what do you think? Hey, we've got a very interesting guest for you. A lady who's been my neighbor for years and years. And I know her both as a fine neighbor, and most of you will know her as a representative, Representative Lucille McCollough, a lady who, well, what can I say? We're going to be talking to Lucille in a few minutes. We're going to be talking about some of her successes and some of the times that have not been so successful. So just hang in there. Well, listen, I want to thank you for your letters, by the way. I've been getting a lot of mail here, and evidently you like Dr. Straith, the plastic surgeon. I'll let you in on a secret. We're going to replay some of those shows with Dr. Straith, so just hang in there and watch, Channel 24, the announcements coming up when he'll be back on the show, as well as Channel 19, and we'll announce it in advance. However, I got to tell you a trade secret. I talked to the good doctor today. You remember I was kidding him about whether or not the operations hurt to get rid of the bags and so forth and so on? He had an eye operation. That's right. He had one of his surgeons do an eye job on him last week. And I talked to him 3 days after the operation, and he was up and running around. So I guess it is a good deal after all. And by the way, if you folks want to comment to me, if you want to, drop a note here at Group W Cable, all you have to do is write Russ Gibb at random, Group W Cable, Mercantile Drive, Dearborn, Michigan, and it'll get here, okay? And we'll entertain your letters. I got a note here. It says, Mr. Alexander Gillespie out in Grinley Park just wanted to say hello, and I appreciate that, Al. And then I got an interesting letter from a C.Y. Borg, and it's rather detailed, but I'd like to read it if you don't mind. It says to Russ Gibb, Dear Mr. Gibb, Sir, as to your comments on capital punishment, I back you up 100%. I think murder should be killed instead of being put out on parole after a few years. It should be used as a deterrent, not only for murder, but also for crimes such as rape, kidnapping, acts of terrorism, and drug dealing. Evidently, Mr. Borg is really going in. And I don't care or agree with the way that it's done. I think the execution should be done in a more beneficial way to the community. Many movies out in the theaters nowadays are based on psychos killing off vast quantities of people with kitchen knives or other means. And these psychos also appear to be invulnerable to bullets and other weapons, and that would kill an ordinary man 50 times over. Therefore, I think we ought to make a big spectacle of the way that we execute them. And he goes on to tell us how the gladiators did it, and that we could make, sort of a Saturday night fry, whereby, you put the guy on television. Of course, that was one of my old suggestions. I believe in capital punishment. I'm sorry. I must tell you that up until 10 years ago, I didn't. I said, no, that was God's decision, that man was not fit to take another person's life. But after witnessing some of the horrendous things that are going on today, I think we should reinstate the death penalty. And so, Mr. Borg, I thank you for your note, and I agree with you that the death penalty has been used throughout history, even down to the ancient Romans, so maybe we ought to take another look at that. If you disagree, you have the right to come on the show and jump up and down and say, Gibb, you don't know what you're talking about, and we'll move from there. Anyhow, I want to spend as much time as we possibly can today with my guest, Lucille McCollough, so we're going to take a break here, put on some commercials. You got to pay the bills, folks. That's the way it's done. You got to pay the bills. And then we'll be right back with Lucille McCollough and Russ Gibb and Randy. Lucille McCollough, one of the great names in politics in Michigan. She's a lady that I've known for many years, not only as a neighbor, but as my representative. I've watched her career with amazement because she is an amazing lady. She holds records for attendance, I think perfect attendance in the state legislature. She has served Dearborn well for many, many years. And then this last election, something happened. Lucille, what happened?
Well, I wonder too. I have been encouraged to check into a few things. But the election is over, and I see many things to be done. Not in Lansing alone, but in our own town. So, what will be, as they say. And I'm encouraged this morning. It's a dark, dreary day. But as I drove around town before I arrived here, I noticed some improvements.
In our town?
In our town, in the last week or so.
And why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know why, but I think maybe the fact that someone is speaking up for the homeowners and saying this town needs cleaning up. So I noticed some of the dirty spots over around where we live.
Sure, the little park behind us has been let go, there's no question.
And that lot on the corner of Kentucky and Warren is an eyesore. I've been trying to get the city to clean that up or do something a long time. And I checked into who owned that lot. And I was surprised. Stanley Kresge.
The Kresge of the Kresge Institute?
Stores.
Kmart, the whole thing?
Well, I don't know what connection he has, but we know Stanley Kresge in connection with the Kresge stores. And I had a beautiful letter from him, not on this, but telling me he was sorry I would no longer be in Lansing. And I thought, now here, I'm going to answer that. And I'm going to say to Stanley Kresge, you own some property on our street, and it is an eyesore. And I am sure you don't know about it, but maybe we can get you to do something.
So you're going to become an activist in our town?
I'm going to try, if I can.
Well, see, you have the connections in Lansing. For how many years did you serve, Lucille?
28 in
28 years.
Lansing and 4 on the city council here.
Why do you think you were defeated this time?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. Number one, the opposition had barrels of money.
Okay, the opposition, Jack O'Reilly?
No, my opponent.
The young Republican?
Yes. My opponent had lots of money. And money speaks in elections. They've become very expensive. And secondly, I think there were people who thought I couldn't lose. And some did not get around to voting.
You mean you think some of your supporters didn't get out to the polls?
I think some were not able to get there for various reasons. And they were content that I would win anyway.
You were a shoo-in at that point?
Yes.
But what about the mayor's letter? What was your feeling on that?
And then the mayor's letter was the cap of all things, in my opinion. This very untrue, horrible letter had a good deal of influence. And I think that temporarily people believed that maybe the mayor was saying something about taxes and pushing the blame on the legislature and so on. And they wondered. And we didn't have time because it was a last-minute attempt to get the truth through to the people. We spent some money on a letter, but mails are slow, and they didn't come through. And then I'm concerned, and some of our election inspectors have called it to my attention that the absentee ballots are a problem in this town.
Do you think that maybe the election has been called incorrectly? Are you going to challenge? You can't. It's too late now, isn't it?
I am not going to challenge it because I see other things that need to be done. And, but some of the election inspectors and some of my friends who observed the counting of absentee ballots called it to my attention that there were big boxes of absentee ballots that came in very late. They wondered where they had been and why the delay.
Are you suggesting that your competition or the city officials were purposely keeping those ballots?
No, I do not know why these boxes of absentee ballots came late. I was not there, but I was told. And why they were not counted along with the other ballots at the proper time. Now,
Do you know whether they were ever counted, though?
I don't know too much about it, except the fact that they came late, later than usual, these two big boxes.
Well, see, what you're intimating is that there was some hanky-pank going on in the election.
I cannot and would not attempt to prove it. But the thing I'm getting at, Russ, is this. For a long time in Lansing, we have been concerned about the counting of absentee ballots. They, of course, are in the possession of the local community after they're voted. And we are trying to be certain, positive, that our elections are honest and factual. And so I think maybe we can do more than we have done since this has come to my attention.
To improve the election process.
Yes.
But what about the mayor? How do you feel as a person when you read that letter? Frankly, I thought you and Mr. O'Reilly were great friends. And both Democrats, right? Both in the Democratic Party. And yet, here he supports a Republican.
Well,
here's a person who's been for years and years our representative. Everybody thought you would get elected. How did you feel about that? Why did he do that, in your mind?
I cannot understand a public official doing a thing of this kind. After all, we have our personal feelings. I did not know that there was any unpleasant feeling between the mayor and myself. That was a surprise to me. And how a public official who represents the people in Dearborn could possibly put out such a poison pen letter, and at the last minute, which indicates to me he did not want me to have an opportunity to reply. Otherwise, it could have been done long ago.
Where was the letter incorrect, Lucille? Where did he slant it, if he did?
Well, number one, he accused me of being untruthful, and that is shameful for a mayor to accuse me of such a terrible thing, or to accuse anyone. If someone said to you, Russ, you're untruthful, how would you feel?
Well, I'd be pretty wild. I'd be pretty crazy. But in politics, you expect these things.
No, you do not expect a letter of this kind. His closest friends have written me letters saying they cannot accept this sort of thing.
But if it were incorrect, Lucille, you could file a lawsuit. I mean, you can't just slander people in public. There must have been some truth in what he was saying.
There was no truth in the letter. I turned it over to our attorneys in Lansing, and they said, here, you have a beautiful libel suit. Beautiful, before election. If you lose this election. Now, I do not wish to spend my time in court.
Making lawyers rich. Even though your son, Pat, and now a state senator, is a lawyer.
You see, calling people names, blaming them, is not serving the people.
But why did Jack O'Reilly do that? Your fellow Democrats.
Well,
why do you think he did it?
Well, I have my own personal feelings.
Well, tell me why. Come on now. Come on, you're honest. You just finished telling me you're an honest politician. Now tell me, what's your feelings?
Well, let me say, this was not the first attack by the so-called lifelong Democrat against a Democrat. This was not the first attack. In the 1980 election, a paper was put out door to door with the mayor and his department heads and others' pictures on, praising my Republican opponent. That was number one.
Well, is the mayor really then an independent? Is that what you're saying?
The mayor is really,
what is he?
If
really?
I must say so, in my opinion, the mayor is a turncoat.
He's not a good Democrat then?
Nothing about him good for our party.
Will you work against the mayor in every way you can?
I will work for the good of the people. If it means working against the mayor, I'll do so.
Have you talked to the mayor since the election?
No, I have not.
Has any attempt been made by either party to contact one another?
Pat wrote a letter in answer to the mayor's...
This is your son and our new state senator?
Yes. In answer to the mayor's vicious attack, outlining why the mayor was the person not being truthful. In every instance in his letter, he was untruthful.
But see, I can't find out where. Where do you think he was untruthful? You've told me that he was untruthful, but where?
Where? Oh, the whole letter. The whole letter. Number one. We are all concerned, since O'Reilly became mayor, with the high homestead taxes.
Okay.
We have not been accustomed to high taxes of this kind on our homes.
But isn't that really that the taxes, the burden has shifted? Because before, the Ford Motor Company used to pay the majority of taxes, right? And really what's happening, the taxes haven't risen outside of the normal rate, but it's because of the fact that the Ford Motor Company, now that burden has been passed on via the legislature to the homeowners.
This is what the city administration, not only Dearborn, but others, are trying to tell the people.
Yes, that's their point of view. And in fact, I read it in one of their statements.
And I suppose the mayor who raised his taxes 300% in his short time in office on homes wants to find someone to blame. And so he blames the legislature. But the truth of the matter is, every year a city budget is set up and taxes are spread to pay that city budget, to cover it. Now, if it was the fault of the legislature, number one, the legislature has nothing to do with the local city budget. Nothing. We do nothing on that. That's done by local officials.
In other words, you think the budget could be cut even more?
Yes. And I also think that when assessments go up, That's what we're talking about, that he's trying to blame the legislature for. When assessments go up, the rate per thousand can be reduced to adjust the taxes.
Right.
But instead of that, last year they raised the rate on the big assessment, which made the big tax bill.
So you believe that it's the O'Reilly administration, they're not cutting back enough, is one of the reasons why our taxes are going up?
I believe personally the O'Reilly administration is extremely inefficient, that their priorities are wrong. When the city gets this big tax from each home, a big raise, they get a bundle of money. They can spend that however they please.
But I thought that the city, the mayor, was trying to cut down on a number of employees via attrition. Costs have risen, as we all know. And so isn't he in a bind?
I say this, from my experience on budgets and priorities in the state of Michigan. And of course, I'm a legislator, not a governor and administrator. But I say that the priorities are wrong, that there is extreme inefficiency in the city on the spending of taxpayers' money.
My dear friend, the time is over. I have to say goodbye right now. I want to thank you, and on behalf of the citizens and those people that have known you for years, thank you for all the marvelous things you've done for our city. I know you're going to be a great gal and a great critic of the administrations that are in power, whoever they may be, and I hope that for many, many years we're going to hear your voice on what you think could be good and how we can improve our town, Dearborn. Thank you, Lucille McCollough. I'll be right back. Lucille McCollough, a great lady, and I think we're pretty lucky to have her in Dearborn, Michigan. Boy, she said some things there. I'll bet City Hall wants to respond to that, and of course they're welcome to come on the show anytime, and I hope Lucille will come back, because I'm sure she has a lot more to say. Plus, I want to get her son, Pat, on. He's an interesting guy, too. Hey, if you'd like to comment on the show, just drop me a card here to Russ Gibb at random, Group W Cable, Mercantile Drive, Dearborn, Michigan, and, you know, you can add your 2 cents to whatever we're doing. After all, it doesn't make any sense without you. For those of you that took the time to watch the show today, I want to say thank you. For those of you that took the time to drop a card or a letter, I want to say thank you. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for just being you. Russ Gibb at random.